We're currently letting people in and we'll be starting momentarily. So we're just about a minute after the hour. Again, welcome those of you that have just come into the webinar. We'll be starting momentarily. Okay, so I think we've got a good group to kick things off as additional people are coming in. I'm going to get started here out of respect for everyone's time. Thank you for being here. I'm welcoming you to our webinar, Liberation Day, Tariffs, Chaos, or Opportunity. I'm Leslie Levy-August, Chief Marketing Officer for KYG Trade. And for those of you who may not know, KYG stands for Know Your Goods. We're excited to have you here today, and we're going to be exploring solutions for tariff volatility, analytics, and adapting to the fast-changing regulatory environment. I want to give you some logistics, and then we'll get to the content. The speaker invites your questions, so please use the Zoom Q&A feature. And just to avoid confusion, the chat feature is disabled for the webinar. We're going to try to answer as many questions as possible, and we have set some time aside at the end to address them, but you can populate the Q&A with questions as we go along. If we don't get to all of them, we will respond to you by email within a few days, assuming you haven't asked the question anonymously. There will be a survey at the end of the webinar. We would appreciate your feedback. We are not going to be sending the recording automatically to all registrants, but if you'd like a copy of the recording, you can email me at leslie@kyg.ai. That's leslie@kyg.ai. So here's the agenda we have lined up for you. We're going to start with an overview of KYG Trade, following a presentation on how KYG Trade addresses the current volatile trade and tariff environment, and we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. A little bit about us and what we do. We were founded in 2022, and we had a mission to revolutionize global trade management. In just a few years, we've grown very rapidly, managing over 2 million items and 21 million tariff and trade attestations to date. The platform is designed to be enterprise grade, and we offer SaaS solutions that can be deployed on public, private, or hybrid clouds. And we pride ourselves on fast and easy integrations, whether you're looking to use our system standalone or to integrate it with existing systems. We do leverage Descartes' global regulatory content and updates for over 160 countries, and that ensures that our clients are always compliant with the latest regulations. Our technology is backed by a patent that covers tariff, trade, and ESG attestations and makes us a leader in the field. And no AI tool for trade would be complete without a mention of a human in the loop. We use AI to automate many aspects of trade management, such as product data classification, regulatory compliance, but we understand that a human expertise is crucial for ensuring accuracy and making nuanced decisions. And that's why we incorporate a human in the loop model where product data, attributes, and attestations are optionally reviewed and approved by a human. And this hybrid approach allows us to achieve a high level of automation while maintaining the flexibility to handle complex cases that require human judgment. We do have record keeping, immutable storage, and reporting. All changes and collaborations are recorded in real time, so you have a comprehensive and immutable audit trail. We have a collaboration tool that facilitates seamless internal and external communication. You can track changes and updates to your product data effortlessly. We have scheduled reports, custom reports, so you can generate insights and stay compliant with regulatory requirements. Now, after that summary, I'd like to introduce our founder and CEO, Todd R. Smith. He's a licensed customs broker and a former partner in the trade and customs practices of KPMG and EY. He founded KYG Trade 4 years ago to address the limitations of existing automation for global trade compliance. And with that, Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for the introduction, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I thought what we would do is just level set and talk a little bit about tariffs, and also talk, because I'm seeing a lot on LinkedIn and elsewhere, lots of emails, invitations for webinars to talk about mitigation strategies. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and, where KYG Trade fits in those mitigation strategies in this environment that we're in. And then we'll just, maybe open it up for Q&A towards the end. So if you have questions, as Leslie said, please, submit them through the app. But yeah, starting off with tariffs, as you probably know, the president has been busy. In preparing for the webinar, I went to the USTR website and I just wanted to look at the inventory of, executive orders and press releases and amendments. And as you can see here, there's just a few. And as I was looking, at this list, my eyes spied and noticed this little note that you see here on how reciprocal tariffs were calculated. So my curiosity got the best of me. And if you open up the document, there's a 2-page document that basically defines what is and how a reciprocal tariff is calculated. And what you're seeing there is the formula. I didn't want to write the long description of what that means, so I'm going to just read you a snippet of it. But it talks about the decrease in imports due to a change in tariffs equals delta tau sub I times epsilon times pi times m sub I less than 0, assuming that offsetting exchange rate and general equilibrium effects are small enough to be ignored. The reciprocal tariff that results in a bilateral trade balance of 0 is the formula that you're seeing before you. Wow. Reciprocal tariffs formula. It was interesting because I had remembered also seeing a article that the New York Times, had written, and they had their own formula for how reciprocal tariffs were calculated, and it looked a little bit different. It looked just like this. So that's the New York Times version of how to calculate the reciprocal tariffs, juxtaposed to the U.S. trade reps formula. Something tells me that maybe the editor or the writer of the story for the New York Times maybe submitted the U.S. trade reps definition to ChatGPT and asked to simplify it, and this is what they came up with. I don't know. But here we are. And the other thing that I've done, and I actually did this the day of the president's, uh, uh, you know, I guess press briefing on the reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, is, I read word for word that executive order. And, one of the things that did strike me among others was just, the language in there on enforcement. And so we got to know, as trade compliance professionals in this field, that there will be people, and the government knows this too, looking for ways to reduce the impact. Um, I recall driving to work one morning, and there was a owner of a small business being interviewed on one of the news channels, and she was saying that there's a container stuck in China. She can't really afford to import it, and this was on a national talk show news channel, and she was just, as the CEO, she was saying she's looking at her options of having the container shipped to Australia, where they will, label and package the goods and then send them to the US to avoid the tariffs. And I'm like just thinking, no, you can't do that. Um, it was stated in the executive order that CBP, does have the right to request documentation to support, facts on, where your goods come from, the country of origin of those goods, the tariff schedule of those goods. And as we'll talk about a little bit further into the webcast, there's some new exclusions that can apply related to U.S. content, but Customs has the ability to go in and audit and look at all of the facts and circumstances and records to determine that you're actually entitled to those deductions or exclusions. So that was in that same April 2nd executive order. What we're also seeing is an uptick, a legitimate uptick in audit activity by CBP. So this information is relatively fresh off the press. This is on the CBP website. They have press releases. This is what they refer to as a monthly update. And as you can see here, the number of audits and the loss of revenue connected, that's a fancy way of saying the duty that should have been paid that wasn't paid, and penalties on top of that. In January, there were 30 audits, 70 million in loss of revenue. And you can see how that has increased, between January and March. I can tell you from my years of practice at the Big Four that this type of increase in audit activity is remarkable, and could be a sign of the times. So like we'll be watching this every month, but clearly this is a sign to take what you're doing seriously, to not try to avoid come up with tariff codes that don't represent as high of a rate of duty or report inaccurate information. It doesn't seem like now would be a good time to, as we would say, play the audit lottery, given the uptick in audit activity. We're going to be watching that closely. So, okay, that's the environment that we're in. How can KYG help you in your job, do your job more efficiently? Try to identify, lawfully available deductions and exclusions from these tariffs, and basically enable you to get your job done without having, to, hire teams and hundreds of people, which is really what it would probably take without technology like KYG Trade. So we're going to start off with a discussion on AI-assisted classification, but we're not just talking about classification here. We're also going to talk about multi-country mapping. A lot of our clients are asking us to help them figure out the rate of duty going into other countries. This was certainly, something that needed to be looked at because of the original plan for the reciprocal tariffs, which was a country-specific rate. Now, as you may know, there's a 10% flat rate, except for a few countries, China, Hong Kong principally. And then we're also going to talk about what we're seeing, and we're also getting a lot of inquiries and questions about how to help manage reporting the various Chapter 99 numbers that are coming out almost daily. But as it relates directly to HS classification, it's going to be important that you have the backup to support the classifications that you're reporting to customs. Full stop. And so our tool has the ability to help you determine the classification. We have an AI assisted with a human in the loop classification oracle. We refer to it as an oracle or a microservice that can really help you do this and speed up the time that it takes you to classify the what I would refer to the old-fashioned way. And as you can see here, there's quite a lot of detail. We go into a very good analysis at an indent level, starting with the chapter all the way down to the statistical suffix, 10 digits. And so our system gives you a readout of the confidence for every indent level in that classification process. It's also important when you're using AI to classify your products, it's important that you as the reviewer know that the AI has a good grasp and understanding of the product that it's classifying. And so we have introduced a confidence score in Kay, who is our AI assistant, understanding and comprehension of your product before we classify the product. And in some cases, not only could Kay not comprehend the description of the product, but a human user probably in many cases may not also understand what the product is. And so if the confidence score on that comprehension of the understanding of the product is low, the AI will just stop and say, there's not enough information here to go on. So we have all kinds of gates and controls around the classification. As you can see here, we do this indent analysis. We have a confidence score at each indent level. We're supporting citations and authorities at each indent level. That includes WCO explanatory notes, rulings, informed compliance publications, and we'll even give you a GRI. And as you can see here, for each indent level, not only will we give you, or Kay will give you Kay's top choice, but you'll also get the other choices that were considered in the background. You can look at those other choices and why Kay excluded those. If you disagree and think that Kay got it wrong, you're able to go ahead and pick the code that you think is correct. And at the end of the day, if none of the codes, if you're in the wrong heading, subheading, you can course correct. All of this becomes part of the audit record. So if and when customs were ever to ask, how did you come up with the classification? Even though you're using AI, you still have a very rich audit trail on how you came up with that classification. So the same principles that we use for HS classification, other than the authorities and the sources, we can also do for export classification. And so this is just an example where we are able to offer tools to help speed up the time it takes to determine jurisdiction and classification for your products. We support traditional decision trees, which are out of the box with our platform, but they can also be customized to your particular fact pattern. And then we also have an AI-assisted capability that will classify your product just like you saw for the HS classification. So these are available now to you. We also have the ability to look at images, catalogs, diagrams, schematics. Our AI has gotten really good at not only looking at the what is the product, but the grade of leather, on the product. It can discern, plastic from leather soles, for example. So having the ability to ingest and read documents, brochures, and pictures is really helping with the classifications. Now, if you fall into that fact pattern where on May 2nd, you're no longer going to be able to declare your goods under a type 86 or de minimis entry, you should know that our platform is capable of ingesting literally tens of thousands of products. We can run these in bulk. We can run thousands, if not tens of thousands within 24 hours. And you're not only going to get an HS code, but you're going to get the whole rationale, the citations that I showed you earlier. All of that's going to come, from our system in bulk, in mass. So the user would not necessarily have to go through each one at a time, but if the human user chooses to, of course, you have the workflow and the capabilities to do that. What we're finding is that as our users are getting more confident with K's results and output, including more confident that the confidence score that you're seeing actually, is accurate, then they are letting these classifications go to autocomplete in some cases. And then there are other cases where the confidence isn't high, and those go into a human work queue where they can be worked. So whether it's one at a time or in bulk, we have those capabilities. The other thing that, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're being asked a lot about is helping our customers map the HS code in one country to multiple countries. And historically, this has not been a fun exercise. Historically, what you probably have experienced if you're not using, a tool like ours, is that the ability to match one to one a 10-digit code in, let's say, the US to a 10-digit code in any other country, Canada, what have you, is not happening all the time. In fact, it could be that you can only get like a one-to-one match, maybe 40% of the time. That would be the percentage that I would use. I mean, and then we have techniques programmatically, systematically, where you can, okay, so I have a 10-digit in the US, let's back off and look at an 8-digit match or a 6-digit match. And then you can get a little higher percentage of codes that match. But as some of you may know, even if it's a direct 10 code in the US to a 10 code in some other country match, the descriptions may not match. So even though you've had a systematic match, qualitatively, because of the descriptions not being the same, you're not matched. And so we are actually using our AI, and Kay is able now to do a semantic similarity match. So we're not only looking at the 10-digit code or the 6 or the 8 or the 6-digit code itself, but we're looking at the descriptions. And that is really helping us get to the right match a much, much higher percentage of the time. So this is something that if you need help with, that we're able to help you today on. This is an example between US and Canada. The same product description, as you can see here, has a different code. And if we had tried to match the 0010 to the Canadian 0010, it may have had a completely different description. But in any case, this would not have matched at the 10-digit. With our semantic search, we can get it to match. Moving on from there, just as a matter of course, we have not only the tariff codes for all countries that Descartes supports, but we also have the rates of duty for all countries. And so if you're needing help with determining the duty rates, the reciprocal tariff for the same product going into another country, for example, or even doing a landed cost calculation, we have you covered. So here's my formula that I came up with. I don't know if we'll see it in the New York Times, but it's, 1T is equal to or greater than N99. And so and I'm having a little fun here, obviously, that what that is that where T equal tweet and where N equal 1 or more of chapter 99 codes. All right. And so what do I mean by that? Well, with each one of those executive orders that I showed very early in the presentation, and the annexes and the amendments, which we're hearing about, being tweeted out. That's how we're learning a lot about this stuff. It comes a different chapter 99 code. And for grins, I just downloaded the chapter 99 from the ITC website. And for the version 10, revision 10, which is current as of today, I was surprised that the volume of pages for the Chapter 99 notes had increased by 38 pages. And if you ever looked at the detail of these notes, it's small print, guys, to begin with. So 38 pages, there's a lot of content there. Since November, uh, actually, it was, yeah, I think since September, yeah, as the slide says, the increase has been 38 pages, principally as a result of all of those executive orders. And we're getting calls from our clients that are telling us that their brokers are pushing back and they're asking the importer of record to figure out, which of these Chapter 99 codes apply to their shipment. Moreover, there's a value allocation that could need to take place. There could be exceptions, exclusions. It's getting very confusing, even for the best of the best brokers. And I spent some time a couple of weekends ago uh, looking at this myself, and this is what I came up with, guys. This is for just one HS code, usually in the online tariff, the publicly available tariff on the ITC website. There'll be a link with a note, and that note will take you to a footnote, and the footnote will have you look at different Chapter 99s without really telling you why. And then it'll also refer you to actual paragraphs within that 689 or 98 page document. And if you've ever gone into the notes for Chapter 99, at least the way they're presented as a download, it's a flat file. It's a PDF flat file. There are no bookmarks. It's really hard to do searching. It's difficult. And so there's been a lot of complexity introduced along with the new tariffs administratively. And there's a lot of, back and forth between the importers and the brokers as to who's really responsible for figuring this stuff out. Well, you should know as an importer of record that at the end of the day, it's up to you to get this right, not necessarily your broker. You can rely on your broker, ask your broker, but at the end of the day, if it's wrong, Customs is going to come after and you. The importer of record is responsible, not the broker. So it kind of behooves the importer to know this stuff. But the complexity is here, guys. There is a U.S. content exclusion, which we'll get a little bit more into during the webinar, that allows you to deduct 20% or more of the value of an imported product based on U.S. content rules. So if you have the ability to actually figure that out, well, then you got to report it to Customs. And what Customs is saying in one of their recent CSMS messages is that you have to separate out the non-US content, put that under one 99 number versus the US content, put that under a different 99 number. And by the way, in the instructions on in that CSMS, they list a code that is the wrong code. So even, they're not getting it right all the time, but that code does not exist. It was transposed. It should be 01. What they're also telling you is there is a sequence in how you're supposed to report these, the plethora of Chapter 99 numbers. And so they lay out this sequence in that same CSMS message. I have the date there. So this is not KYG trade. This is what the government is telling you in terms of how the broker needs to report the sequencing of the various 99 rates when they file their 7501, Chapter 98, Chapter 99, the various trade remedies in order. If you have a U.S. and non-U.S. content, that's going to slide in probably under this IEEPA reciprocal here. Other Chapter 99 numbers, and then the actual base rate. Wow. Okay. So what we're doing to help our customers is we've come up with a process to help you figure out which of these 99s apply to your product, and we'll also help you figure out what exclusions apply to these products. We're going to make this easy for you. And so this is just a preview, of how that's going to happen. Once we have classified your product and we know the origin of your product, then you have the ability to go into this process. we have the ability to literally look at every single 99 that will apply to your product, and then we will serve up the possible exclusions that you could apply. And as we'll show you in a few minutes, we will help you figure out if your product in fact qualifies for these exclusions, including that U.S. content exclusion that we just mentioned. And if there's a little I with a note that tells you to go look at paragraph 19A, instead of having to go to the 600-page PDF to find that, you'll be able to click, and a slider will come out, and the paragraph that note refers to will be right there, right in front of you, so you can read it. So we're trying to make this simpler for you guys. After you've done your homework and you've determined which of the 99 codes apply, which of the exclusions applies, you may be thinking, well, from a sourcing standpoint, I'd like to run some scenarios and see if, I can identify further savings if I've missed anything. And so we are also introducing tariff analytics. So again, for that very same product from the very same country, the same HS code, with now knowing the exclusions and the possible different Chapter 99s that you can apply, even Chapter 98, or there could be, derivative, aluminum and steel derivatives, what have you. We can help you model that for your senior executives. Okay, so once we've helped you figure all that out, we can also enable you to easily send that information in a nice box, a packet. It's a JSON message that you can just send right to your broker. We're not an entry filing system. We can work with different third parties who are direct filing. They have direct filing with not only U.S. Customs, but other countries as well. For example, ClearNow is an example of a company that we are partnering with. But irrespective of the actual filing of the entry, just to get this information to the broker in the form that they need to submit it to Customs in is going to be a tremendous help. And of course, there'll be an audit record for how all of this came about, how you figured out, why you picked, which 99 and why you picked which exclusion. So just in what I've showed you, I just want to give you a little help, I guess, information to help you get approval for technology like KYG Trade. I mean, I'm sure you may be looking at other technology too. Everybody wants an ROI. I can tell you for certain with the increase in duty rates that the ROI calculation and business case has only gone up exponentially, all right? And so there is a definite strong ROI now for trade technology. And with what we're doing with embedding AI into so many features and functions, what we're seeing is a blended efficiency gain of approximately 75%. And so how we're getting that is what we're seeing, again, is as you get comfortable with the output of our AI assistant K, and you start to let things go to an autocomplete, we're seeing that 50% of the time, you're going to get comfortable that K is getting it right. Of course, you're still going to want to do, periodic reviews, audits, just like you would otherwise on a post-entry basis, for example, to make sure that, those confidence scores and accuracy levels are staying high. But we are seeing about a 50% improvement in accuracy and confidence, which is allowing things to autocomplete. And then for the other 50% that goes into the human queue, what we're seeing is that the amount of time it takes for the human to review and complete those classifications, that time is also being reduced by around 50%. So that's how we come up with the 75% overall efficiency gain. And we have more information on this if you reach out to us. Okay, so what else besides tariff classification? As I mentioned earlier, there are lots of service providers that are going to be advertising webinars on how to mitigate the tariffs. a former partner at the big four, two big fours, I feel very confident that what you see on the board here is going to be in part the topics that will be discussed at your favorite service providers webinar, because they're all going to be having them, right? So whether it's a law firm or a consulting firm, everyone is going to be saying, look, you need a system and a tool to do analytics. You want to review your prior years or two worth of imports and now apply the new tariffs to what happened historically as a projection of what's going to be happening in the future. We can help you with that. Strategic sourcing decisions, taking advantage of free trade agreements. There are a lot of products that are being imported, that have been imported historically under duty-free rates, medical devices, electronics, and now they're all subject to duties. Those companies and those importers historically did not necessarily qualify or need to qualify for free trade agreements. There was just really no reason to, but now there's a big reason. And so free trade agreements is going to be something that you should look at. Statutory exclusions, if it was zero duty rate, we didn't have to look at that as often. Now you're going to want to. There can be adjustments to your transfer pricing policies. This is where importers are importing products from related parties. There could be some opportunities there. Chapter 98 is an obvious winner, but administratively it's hard to document in many cases. Obviously, the ROI is going up now, and it will make more sense to go after those Chapter 98 savings. We can help you with that. Duty drawback, a great opportunity, not available for every fact pattern and all the different executive orders and the Chapter 98s that have come out, but there's still a lot of opportunity with drawback in foreign trade zones. Not everything, will qualify at the FTZ level. First sale for export is a duty savings opportunity that a lot of companies, again, have been taking advantage of for years. There've been a lot of companies and industries that really had never even thought about it, again, because rates were zero, but now it's something that needs to be looked at because there could be some substantial savings with the first sale program. And then there is this new U.S. content exclusion, as I mentioned earlier, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. So these are the core things that companies can do. I'm sure I've left off a few, but these are the sort of the bread and butter types of opportunities that the trade lawyers, the consultants, and really anybody experienced in this field ought to they should know about and really should be looking seriously at. So how, again, can KYG trade help you in these areas? So what we're really good at, besides classification, is ingesting unstructured federated data related to the production of your product. So that would be a bill of materials, as well as data sheets and drawings and specifications. And on top of that, also information related to a transaction that relates to a shipment. Okay, so it's a combination of really going deep into the bill of materials on the product side and how it was produced, where it was produced, but then also a layer involving the shipment or the transaction itself. Who were the parties in that transaction? What were there two sales versus one sale? And we're able to work with information in very different forms. Some of our clients, we have API connections into their PLM systems, their product lifecycle management systems. These are where the engineers are designing the bills of materials. In other cases, there is no API integration, and so we're able to ingest this unstructured data, as you can see here on the slide, and make sense of it. So that's really what I think sets us apart from the traditional global trade management software systems that have been on the market, as you know. And so this is just a screenshot, but it works, where we're able to pull in a bill of materials from literally a PDF, not even an Excel sheet, build the bill of materials. You can see here that we can support different levels and different variations or variants of the bill of materials. And we could do this for the same product, same SKU number. We can have different bills of materials if that same SKU is made in different factories, different jurisdictions. And our AI is good at looking at what came in to the bill of materials and if we're missing attributes that are important for whatever analysis that we're doing from a compliance standpoint. So the AI is doing the work that the human used to do when they would, gather information from their clients, from their suppliers, whomever, manually look through pages of documents, find out if it's a complete document set. If it's not, make a note of what's missing. Here's an example where the AI said that there was no purchase order, and in the process of doing the analysis, this is a free trade qualification, free trade agreement qualification. So yeah, you can do an FTA qualification, assuming certain facts on transportation, were compliant before the product ships. So we have the capability to qualify products pre or post shipment with different workflows. And if things are missing, and invariably there will be, the AI can then create, our AIK can then create an email that's very specific, for this item number, for this invoice number, for this shipment number, this is the information that is still missing. The AI can generate this, email it, and our system can monitor, how long it's been since the email went out, when it's time for a follow-up. And then when that information comes back in via email, it just gets ingested into our system and the analysis continues from there. And so what type of analysis can we do? So what we're able to do with that information is, first and foremost, we can qualify your products for free trade agreements, any free trade agreement, out of the box. We don't have to spend cycles and lots and lots and lots of consulting time with systems integrators, building specific rules for specific FTAs and specific vendors and fact patterns. We literally have all rules of origin out of the box. This is an example of an RVC calculation. We can do tariff shift. We can look at transshipment. And this is just an example of the output for one of our FTA qualifications. Just like we can do an FTA qualification, we can now support, and we do. In fact, we demoed this for a client, literally the day, a prospective client, literally the day after the executive order was signed on April 3rd, we were able to show a prospective customer how we can go into that same bill of materials and identify U.S. content and determine whether or not there was the minimum requirement of 20% U.S. content, and then therefore assign the right Chapter 99 and have the audit trail if and when customs wants to come in and have you prove that there was a sufficient amount of U.S. content in the production of that product. So this is how we're able to help you today, with all of the tariffs and the changes that are happening and being, thrown our way, literally almost hourly. And here again, you see an example in that same tariff analytics tool that we've created and we now, have, is we have a lever, if you will, for the U.S. content. So as you're doing your own analytics, you can even see, what the impact would be on a large volume of shipments where the U.S. content percentage was satisfied or was not satisfied. And so we can show you what your cost would be without taking advantage of these free trade agreements and other exclusions, and then with these exclusions, which we are able to help you figure out using our platform in the way that we just showed you. Okay, so to summarize again, you can literally drag and drop a bunch of unstructured data, and our system can then go in and do these types of analysis for you at scale. Here's an example of the output that you get on that U.S. content qualification, just like you saw for the FTA. So we're going in and we're doing a detailed analysis of what we found in that bill of materials, where we can see based on the country of origin of each component, where it was sourced. We can drill down into any component We can request and get information from the producer of that component and get that bill of materials and figure out if there was a substantial transformation on that component to support, the country of origin of that component. We can even make suggestions of U.S. content that may not be showing up in your manufacturing bill of materials, but may nevertheless qualify as U.S. content for purposes of this calculation. And I would argue that intellectual property, for example, certain intangibles that was conducted in the U.S. by the U.S. brand should be allowable in that U.S. content calculation, not necessarily necessary for the declared value to include that, but some would argue you would have to include it in the declared value. And I would argue that even if you had to add 5% U.S. content, intellectual property, R&D, what have you, your declared value may go up, but you now get the 20% or more deduction. So there's an ROI there. And again, we can help you figure this stuff out pretty fast, whether it's, for really any type of commodity, whether it's, this is just an example of an auto part versus apparel. Okay, so what else that our platform has to offer besides what we just showed you, which I think are the most relevant, for the world of tariffs that we're living in today. But just so you're aware, we also can support you on forced labor, detentions, because we are deep into the bill of materials and the transaction documents. It's just another adjacent step to do a analysis to determine if there's any risk of forced labor involved in the production of your products. We have relationships and partnerships, as you can see here, with content providers that have very good information on entities that we're finding in the bill of materials. And the map that you see here is a map that KYG creates from your transaction documents. If you think about a detention, what you're seeing here is a map for the production and transportation, the buy-sell transaction, who the parties were involved in the transaction for that detention. That's what you're seeing here. And that's something that is done through our platform and our APIs with our partners. This is an example of the type of output for a forced labor detention. So I wouldn't print this out and hand it to customs. I say this a lot. But this is a very good, solid first draft of how you would respond to a detention notice based on information that we find in the product genome that we have built on your product, which includes all of the information that I showed earlier. We also have the ability to allow you to search the cross rulings, and this is not a semantic search that you're doing on cross now. This is a natural language semantic search, and this is a game changer when you're searching for rulings. It's hard to explain. You just got to get into it and start using it and see how helpful it is to have a natural language chat with cross rulings to help you in your research. We're also able to help you with detecting discrepancies in post-entry reviews. The AI is really good at looking at disparate data and making sense of it and seeing where discrepancies lie, as you can see here. And we could do this in any language, which is really cool. We have a very detailed audit trail and change log of every interaction that's happening, at the product level, the shipment level. It all gets stored in a mutable record that obviously can't be altered because it's immutable. And we keep it as a permanent record in case there's going to be an audit within the statute of limitations period. Real-time monitoring. So with changes happening hourly, as I said before, we're updating our regulations and our tariff codes just as fast as we get them from Descartes. In some cases, we are monitoring changes that are happening at the bill of materials level, like I said earlier. And so when engineers are subbing out components that may impact a previous classification or origin determination, again, if any of the regs are changing, we're sending out real-time notifications. And then lastly, I like to say we're plug and play. But we have lots of API integrations into legacy ERP systems, other global trade management systems. We're enterprise grade, ISO 27001 certified. This is just an example of one of our implementations where we literally had like 22 API endpoint connections, some running synchronously within a large enterprise. So we work really good alongside the existing global trade management platforms that are out there. We plug and play, we extend and enhance the capabilities of those systems, or we can serve as a replacement. And so, yeah, I've been talking a lot. Just to wrap it up, thank you for taking time to see how we might be able to help you. As you can see here, we're solid with bulk classification and all those citations. We can help with country to country tariff mapping. The Chapter 99, making sense of that spaghetti bowl of Chapter 99 codes that are coming out almost daily. And making sense of that, looking for the exclusions, and then helping you report that to your broker so your broker doesn't have to think necessarily and can just report that on to customs, as well as looking for those nuggets of lawful compliant exemptions from the 301, the 232, the IEPA tariffs, what have you, either in the form of a free trade agreement or a U.S. content exemption. And looking at other different valuation engineering capabilities to lower the rate of duty along with the tariff analytics. So it's cool because you could do all this in one single window, one place. We have the workflow and the rules and the configurations for the human in the loop with the audit trails, plug and play, pretty quick to onboard and get up and running, enterprise grade, and I would argue affordable. So that's all I had to say. I could make you read this long disclaimer, but what I'd really like for you to do, and Leslie would too, is just take your phone and you can scan that QR code that you see there, and it'll take you right to our link where you can schedule a discovery call. We really enjoy having a discovery call with you, hearing about how you think, based on what you've seen, we might be able to help you. And that helps us kind of tailor a next step, which would be a demo. We don't want to go right into a demo because there's just so much that we have to offer. We like to really focus in on exactly, your needs. And so these discovery calls are really important for that. So yeah, please scan that QR code and get a demo call scheduled. And I guess with that, Leslie, we have a few minutes. Any questions came in that we can address, or?
There are a number of questions. We tried to answer them as we went along. A couple of the most recent ones were about integration.
Yeah.
So there was a question about Dynamics 365 integration, S/4HANA integration. I don't know if you want to add any color to my simple yes answers.
Yeah, I wasn't able to multitask quite that much, but thank you for the question. So yeah, as you saw in that earlier slide, we are API friendly, and we have an open. I like to say we have an open API. It's published, it's accessible, it's very well documented. You saw the slide. I'm trying to go backwards. The mention of S/4HANA, absolutely yes. That's in here. All right, this is a lot of SAP legacy as well as HANA, GTS legacy as well as HANA. We haven't yet had a client that was on Dynamics, but we're hosted on Microsoft Azure. We're all on Microsoft Azure and Teams. There's just no reason we cannot API into Dynamics or really any other relatively modern ERP or PLM or CRM system out there.
Todd, somebody asked about CargoWise. I don't think we're integrated there yet.
But same answer.
Yeah, same answer. Yeah,
most definitely.
Yep. Another question, maybe since we've got a few minutes, is kind of a running scenarios kind of question. Can you see landed cost for multiple countries so you can choose which country is the lowest cost option?
Yes, in the slide I showed earlier with the duty rates, we do have a drop down where you can pick and run scenarios where you can pick let's say you've classified your product and you can pick a different country of origin, and you can see, all these different levers change based on the country of origin and how that would impact the landed duty costs coming into the US. If your question is, can we do landed duty costs going into other countries? The answer is, again, yes. In the slider that we have on classification, well, here again, yeah, you're not seeing it, but we have a drop down for country of import, so we can run different scenarios, and we have all the different duty rates as well as taxes and charges, so we can do that.
And Todd, I don't know if I know Benita Lee, you might know her as well. She's asked in the Q&A whether or not she can quote your formula.
Uh-oh. Yeah, yes, I would love that. Thank you.
The email to send to get the recording is leslie@kyg.ai, LESLIE, and I repeated it in the Q&A a number of times, so you can look in there if you need it. Another question that came up was around do we classify chemicals?
Good question.
Yeah, do we have
very good question. So we have not yet had a customer that has asked us to, run a classification involving chemicals through our platform yet, but we would love to give it a try. I happen to think that Kay is going to do well with chemical classifications, and I'm ready to give it a test.
Okay, let me just double check here. Okay, does the system support transfer price adjustments for multiple countries?
So I'm glad you asked that because when I was at the Big Four, my area of specialty happened to be related party pricing and customs valuation. And I worked very closely with our transfer pricing colleagues and have a lot of experience on transfer price adjustments, post adjustments. Aaron, our chief AI officer, and I, I would call, perhaps maybe if there is such a thing, a seminal customs ruling on related party pricing. It's on cross. So we have a lot of experience in this, but I did where on the slide I'm looking for, I did put an asterisk, which means it's currently out of scope for KYG. So what that means is I haven't found a use case where you would literally use AI to help figure out, a transfer price adjustment and a reporting, of that adjustment, into one or more countries like a recon adjustment. But outside of AI itself, our platform, can help you figure out the transfer price adjustment for customs purposes and how to allocate that adjustment to a population, a family of products, and then an export of that via Excel or some other JSON format or XML format so that it can be reported to the customs authorities. So yeah, please give us a call. I'd love to talk to you about that because valuation is something that I really like working in.
Couple more before we close. Can those landed cost scenarios be sent via API into an ERP?
Yeah, most definitely. Again, we're API friendly. API friendly. Just about everything that we do, just about everything that we do on the site, whether it's an HS code classification, a country of origin, free trade agreement, we call those things attestations. All right. If the attestation is an HS code or does it qualify for a free trade agreement, that's an attestation. Which Chapter 99 code links to the base HS code, that's an attestation. Landed cost determination, any of those answers that you get out of our different microservices can most definitely be sent back into one or more external endpoints.
All right, more chemicals. Has
Uh-oh.
Kay eaten CAS numbers to classify chemicals?
This goes back to what I said earlier. I think Kay will do really good with chemicals, especially if we have a CAS number. So bring it
Yeah.
on. I want to give that a try.
Okay. And one more question, and then we'll close. How has the threat of tariffs shaped importer behavior in terms of prioritizing USMCA compliance versus sourcing from outside the region?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that question in terms of, sourcing decisions. That's not, really what we're focused on. I truly, feel bad, for the turmoil, that is being caused geopolitically. All we can do is help you with data and making good decisions. And so I appreciate the question because we can certainly help qualify products for USMCA fast without a lot of tooling. And I know that there's got to be a lot of companies that all of a sudden are saying, we need to do this now. Like we didn't need to do it before, now we need to do it. And so that's what we're here to help. And I truly, truly believe that we have the best capability with the best, most modern, sophisticated software to do this at scale for the enterprise as well as for, small importers. I just, I didn't have a crystal ball when I started KYG Trade 4 years ago. I did not think we would, be in the environment that we are in. It's good for us. It's, we don't like to profit on the misfortunes that others are dealing with right now. But I do really, in my heart of hearts, believe that we have the best platform and technology to help you guys through this.
Todd, would you pop that last slide up so that people can see the QR code and
Oh,
also
yes.
my email address in case they want to grab it if they didn't already grab it out of the Q&A.
There it
And
is.
yep, there it is. So Leslie at kyg.ai if you want the recording. There's the QR code if you want to have a chat with us and
Michael
our
as well.
team. And Michael as well. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
reach out to Michael. And just thank everybody for being here. Appreciate your attention and the great questions that we got. And we look forward to our next webinar, which should be announced within the next couple of weeks. We've been doing them about every 6 to 8 weeks. So look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.